and that's why you haven't heard about him yet. So let me tell you about J. Cohn Gilbert, who's a guy I love, who sits in a little red brick office in Manhattan. And he started something. How many of you are familiar here in Israel with the Tava Chevrati? There's an Amuta set up by a fellow named, by 4 people, Efrat Digani Toprov, Chili Troper, Asaf Banner. By the way, all these guys are doing amazing things. Chili is the Yoetz HaRashiv, the current Tzar Chinuch, Shai Piron, and is made famous by Ilana Dayan in a movie called Tichonei Zdamut Achorona. Asaf Banner is running the equivalent of Teach for Israel right now, and Efrat Digani Topov is running the Charles Bronfman Foundation's investments in education. And they started here something called the Tava Chevrati, which basically is a Tudat Kashrut for restaurants that has nothing whatsoever to do with the kashrut of the food. It has to do with the kashrut of the ethics of the people who run the places. Do you let your waiters keep their tips? Do you provide hasaot for the waiters to go home? Do you have nigishut for nechim? And what these 3 or 4 young people decided to do was essentially create a mechanism for engendering corporate responsibility. And what J. Cohn Gilbert has done is he's invented a new type of corporation. So here in Israel you have Chevra Ba'am and you have a Shutafut Mugbelet, more or less. That's more or less what exists on the books here. And even those are kind of hard to figure out. I've had the unfortunate experience of having to read through corporate legislation when I testified at the Vadat HaChukah here, which was no fun. And in the United States you have C Corps and S Corps and LLCs and LPs and a variety of others. Well, now there's something called the B Corporation. And the B Corporation was started by this guy named J. Cohn Gilbert. And he started it a few years ago. As of yesterday, he's now in 16 states in the United States. And I want to try to describe to you what a B Corporation is, because in his view, and in mine, this is an implementation of Jewish values on the corporate scene. In order to do this, we need to take a step back. Does anybody know what the current responsibility of a director at a company is? By the way, it's true in Israel and it's true in the United States. Does anyone know? Your fiduciary duty as a director. What do I have to do?
Serve the best interests of the shareholders.
Which is? What's the definition of the best interest of the shareholders?
Make money.
Maximize profits. By the way, it's statute. It's made its way through corporate law in Delaware. It's what the legal system says fundamentally. And what a B Corporation comes to say is that there's more to life than making money. It's not that's not important. It's very important. We live in a capitalist society. We live in a society where corporations actually change the world much more than politicians. Since I'm being videoed, I won't say what I think about politicians. And the corporation is a critically important element in the world today. It's not just true in the United States, not just true in Israel, it's true everywhere. If you've read a book called The Green Collar Economy, it's this kind of radical environmentalist whose conclusion of the entire book is, if you want a green revolution to succeed, start a company. It's really true, right? Because change is not made by politicians at the end of the day. Change is made by corporations and by innovation. So what J. Cohn Gilbert has gone to do is he's tried to change the corporate responsibility of what is your fiduciary duty at a company from a C corporation or LLC to what's called a B corporation. A B corporation is a fascinating construct. It says that you're responsible to the shareholders to make the money. You're responsible to the society, meaning the towns you're in, the other people you serve, your customers, which is a novel concept, by the way, your customers. You're responsible on some level to your employees, even beyond the responsibility to pay them severance pay. And you're responsible to an ethical code that we're not going to enforce on you, but that you're going to adopt as a board of directors for what is across the line or not across the line. And the B Corporation started as a voluntary method. You can sign up to be a B Corporation. Benchmark's got 2 or 3 of these already that have signed up to be B Corporations. But now they've gone and they've lobbied in all 50 states in the United States, and they got 60 states now, including Delaware, which is critical, where most companies register, that you can officially become a B Corporation. It's in the corporate law statutes in the state of Delaware. So now if you become a B Corporation in Delaware, you're responsible to your shareholders that you managed the difficult task of being responsible for profits, responsible to employees, responsible to the environment, responsible to your code of ethics, and a host of other things that you're now responsible for. This is actually more complicated, like dramatically more complicated. How do you trade off? Can I make more money, but maybe I don't want to go into gambling? Okay? Can I make more money by firing 30 employees, but I'm going to take down the employment in whatever this town is, right? Can I make more money by not, doing composting of foodstuffs, or am I responsible environment? And this is a much more complex view of the
They
world.
make decisions that will risk the future of the company for immediate profits.
In fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm about to claim exactly the opposite, right?
No, I'm saying
Which is
part of the dilemma, right?
well, one of the fundamentals of the notion of a B corporation is actually these are far more sustainable businesses than businesses that seek only to maximize profits. And by the way, the author of this statement is not J. Cohn Gilbert. It's a very well-known guy today named Jeff Bezos, right? Jeff Bezos has sacrificed the short-term profits of Amazon.com to try to build an ongoing sustainable competitive advantage and do other things. I don't know that he'd answer to all the B corporation criteria, but he's kind of eschewed the kind of general consensus about short-term profits and quarterly profits in order to build what his vision of a long-term corporation. It was ridiculed for a very, very long time, Jeff Bezos. Really, really ridiculed. And what I would argue, by the way, and J. Cohn Gilbert and I have had numerous conversations about this, and he comes from this kind of background, is that essentially this is the Jewish view on the corporation. Fundamentally, Judaism is more complex than most politicians or rabbis would have you believe. It's not easily boilable down to a single statement on what life is complex, and the human condition is complex, and societies are complex, and I think Jewish thinking on them is very, very complex. And we have multiple responsibilities in the world. Now, what's the problem? The problem is that Western legal systems are built on an entirely different set of norms. What's the heart of the Western liberal legal system? Anyone know?
London?
What? Not where. What?
Tanakh.
No.
Western is capitalism and Georgian work ethic.
Rights. The Magna Carta,
Georgian
the
work
Bill of
ethic.
Rights, right? Declaration of Rights. You have it if you go back many hundreds of years through history. Most of Western thought is predicated on a view of rights. And by the way, it's my right to make a profit, my right to earn a living. We have Chok Zchuyot Adam, right? Human rights. Everyone's got rights today. The problem is, if everybody's got rights, then what? What?
What are your responsibilities?
Nobody's got responsibilities. And my rights necessarily come at the expense of your rights. They must. Right? So Iran has the right to build a nuclear weapon. It's their right. Is it responsible? Maybe not. The United States has the right to keep nuclear weapons. Is it responsible? I don't know. I have the right to pollute the environment as much as I want. That's what China's claiming right now, by the way. If you look at pollution, it's, you guys had this for 200 years. You polluted the environment. Now it's our turn. We have the right to do it. You did it. Don't tell us what to do. And in a world that's predicated on rights, it is absolutely inevitable that the right to maximize your profit takes the hold. My right to do whatever I want surpasses your right. But in an ever-expanding world, an ever-communicative world, an ever-connected world, it's unsustainable. It's simply unsustainable. And I actually believe that Judaism rejects this entirely. We actually have no belief in human rights, zero. I know it sounds like a radical statement. We don't believe in it at all. Should I say it again? Because I see there are a lot of shocked faces in the room. Judaism does not believe in human rights. We do not believe in your personal right to anything. You have protections. We'll protect you against certain things. But we don't believe you are entitled to anything.
We were entitled to the land of Israel.
What?
If you want to go historically, we were entitled to the
That's an
land of
interesting
Israel.
question. I actually
What do you
don't...
historically?
I-
Yeshua
I-
was told that this is
Actually, don't think that the Torah says that, by the way. I think it says, if you earn the right, because you continue to do good things, then we won't throw you out of here. Right? That's what it says. And if you look at the Nevi'im, if you look at Yirmiyahu and Yeshayahu, it says, right? If you look at the first parak of Sefer Yeshayahu, anyone know what does it say in the first parak of
Remind us.
right?
I remember.
Lamali rovsi v'chechem yomar Hashem, right? I don't need all of your korbanot or all of your dot. Shiftu yatom rivu almanah. Who's taking care of the ger, the yatom, and the almanah? Where's your responsibility to these people? If you don't have the responsibility, you're out of here. And that's what happened, right? If you read your Sefer Yirmiyahu, it says everyone's corrupt in the Beit HaMikdash. That's Yirmiyahu, it's psukim, right? Everyone's corrupt in the Beit HaMikdash. See ya. If you're not take responsibility for the other people in the land, you have no rights. So rights, or your ability to stay someplace, or your ability to live in a society, are predicated entirely in Jewish thought, at least in my opinion, on responsibilities. Nobody has any rights. Nobody has any rights. And in fact, if I go back to last week's parasha for a second, there's a fascinating story. David kind of referenced it. Moshe says, I've had it. After the Chetem Raglim, the spies, he basically says, I've had it. I don't want to be here anymore. And God tells him, actually it's 2 weeks ago, and God tells, from the Chetem Mitononim, sorry. And God tells him, go find Shivim Ish. And how do you take 70 people in a democracy from 12 tribes? So you can take 6, but it comes to 72. So they picked 6 from each tribe, and they ended up with 72. There were 2 extra people there, maybe. Different explanations of what exactly it is. Their name are Eldad and Medad. We know exactly who they are. And it says, Eldad and Medad mitnab'im b'machaner. They're telling prophecies inside. They didn't go out. All of the other Shivim Zikenim, Chavrei HaKnesset, they went to Yerushalayim. They went out of the machaneh. Eldad and Medad were in the machaneh. And the Midrash tells a fascinating story. It says, what were they saying? They were saying, Moshe met, Yoshua machnis. Moshe is going to die, and Yoshua is going to take Am Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael. What's the relevance? They're in the machaneh, they're out, what's going on? These people were among the people. They understood the new needs of the people as they got ready to go into Eretz Yisrael. It was a different set of needs from that which Moshe Rabbeinu could provide. So they understood that we needed a different kind of leadership to do this, one that was more involved, more shitufi, shared more. And so they were able to see that going forward. That was different from what Moshe said. But back to the notion of rights, we don't believe in those. We believe that if you're responsible, you can do it. So I'll give you an example. The Torah doesn't say that the Sachir has a right to his salary. It says, Lo talin pulat Sachir itchad boker. It doesn't tell you that the Sachir has a right to it. It says that you have a responsibility to give him his salary. Right? And we have other things like that. If I take a mashkanta from something, what does it say? Shev tashivlo, you have to give it back to him. Right? If he doesn't have clothing at night, because you took his beged as a mashkanta, because you gave him a loan, you can't sleep in it at night. He's going to be cold. You have a responsibility to give it back. And I can go on and on and on and give a million examples, but we literally don't believe in human rights. We only believe in human responsibility.
About the right of Shabbat. To rest at Shabbat, it's a kind of right.
It's a right. It's an obligation, not a right. It's not a right. You're not entitled to it. You're required to do it.
Okay.
I think. Yeah, I think. And when we think about corporations and corporate structures and ways that we can lead and do things differently, I think these are kind of the critical elements. For years, the corporate world has talked about corporate responsibility. What's corporate responsibility mean in the modern sense of the word? It means we got a charity arm that will get a lot of press on it. It actually doesn't mean that we'll take our responsibility to society any more seriously. Like, I look at Nochi Dankner, I know I'm on a video, but I'll say it anyway. And I don't think that the guy is evil for trying to make money at all. I think we've demonized him. I think his bad behavior is that a guy like that jeopardizes an entire system by not thinking about what the ramifications are if he fails. Taking into account my failure is part of my responsibility to my corporation, to my employees, and to the society around me. If we think about that, I'm reading a great book right now called The Banker's New Clothes. It's written by a former Israeli named Adamti or Admati, who's a professor at Stanford, and a German professor, his name escapes me right now. Fascinating book. about what wasn't solved after the banking crisis of 2008, which I tend to agree with. And what the banks don't even think about in their pursuit of profits at all is what's the collateral damage or the systemic damage to the system if this all goes wrong. And that's actually a responsibility of a corporation to think of the systemic damage. I don't have to think just about my corporation, my maximization of profits. I need to have responsibility. There's a guy who was one of the leaders of the Mecha'ah Chevratit here, a guy named Barak Segal. He made a lot of noise afterwards. He ran for Knesset. And he came to me moaning at some point about Gil Shwed and Checkpoint and this, that, and the other. They all make too much money. And I told him, no, they're doing their job. I said, if you want to solve for the problem that I think you're trying to solve for, stop trying to take things from people, and we need to start educating that people have responsibilities. I don't think Gil Shwed falls into the same category as Nochi Dankner. I want to be very clear about that. Okay, not at all. So I said, but if you're looking to breed responsibility, it's an education system. It's an answer to a call that says the Western right system is not consistent with Jewish values at all, and it's not consistent, in my opinion, for what Israel ought to represent going forward. We're better than that, and there's kind of enough creative energy here and enough, you'll pardon the term, spiritual energy here to try to do something that is different from that. And if boardrooms spent more time talking about what's our responsibility to a broader set of people, to a broader set of constituencies, instead of how do we find the extra nickel or agura or chor bagrush, I think that's what they used to say here, in the system, I think we'll actually build more sustainable economies. So everyone wins. It's not like you're giving up short-term profit and therefore I lose. Yes, if you don't have enough cash flow, you can't run your business. I understand that, right? But there are a lot of companies who, if they had a broader thought process, a broader set of values about what was important, you would actually get a more sustainable economy. There's a economic historian named Neil Ferguson who's extraordinarily controversial. He says a lot of things that I think are completely off the reservation. He said one thing that I think was really important. He said, people can't eat iPads. And it's true, if people don't make money like lots of people, like hundreds of millions of people and billions of people, then actually Apple can't sell iPads, right? So if people are being shut out from the economic system because I'm getting ruthlessly efficient, which I'll come back to in 1 second, then they can't eat the iPads and they can't buy the iPads, and long term the economy becomes completely unsustainable. Now, I do want to say something about ruthless efficiency because I have a whole chapter in my book on it.
Can I be a devil advocate
Sure.
for a minute? So, it's definitely a fresh look at social responsibility for the corporate world. But if you look just a little bit in the macro, you know that something comes in which changes the whole thing. And the whole idea of limited resources in the world as it is, and the whole philosophy that not showing growth is non-sustainable for a company, is something that is challenging the theory that you're talking about. Because if I want to be successful in the stock market, I need to show that I'm growing better than what the banking system can give me, right? Otherwise, people will not invest in me and will have this cash flow that you discussed
Sure.
before.
I just don't understand why they're mutually exclusive.
Because I need to make sure that the iPad lasts for 18 months and then I throw it in order to be successful.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I have to do. Otherwise, people will not buy the next one. And then I will not make all of that money in order to be
So let me
socially
challenge that for a
responsible.
second. I really want to talk about ruthless efficiency, which I believe in, by the way. But let me challenge that assumption. Do people buy products because they have to? That's a really terrible way to run a business. Those are the businesses that are not sustainable. Those are the ones that don't
You know
delight
the story of
customers.
the
Do you know
light bulb, right?
J.C. Penney? You know J.C. Penney? Oh, yeah, the light bulb. Great
You know-
example. Yeah, what's the story of the light bulb?
We have the technology to last to generate the light bulb that will last 100 years.
You're right. So why don't we do it?
because because the last company that tried ran out of business.
That's exactly my point. Those are the companies that today, those companies that don't innovate like that are going to go out of business because there are people who are willing to build products that do last 100 years and that want to delight customers, and that's the company of the future. The company of the last 150 years are exactly the ones that you're describing, right? The ones that maximize short-term profit to make sure you threw away the light bulb and did that. But in a completely transparent world that we live in right now, that is completely unsustainable. You can fool some of the people for a limited period of time today.
You see a change?
Oh yes, for sure. For sure. Here,
So Epson
Look at this thing.
Causing their printer to stop after they will remove the chip of
Who?
counting.
Who?
Epson.
Who?
Yeah, company.
Who?
Printers company.
Anyone here own Epson printer?
Well, look at the refrigerator. It used to be forever. Now it's people's refrigerators die in them every 5 to 10 years.
I don't know. I got mine for 20.
But I don't think it's usually the
Maybe you have what it used to be.
I don't think it's usually the company that makes the light bulbs that does the innovation. It's usually someone else.
I agree. That's my point, right? Which is the people who did the light bulb that runs out of steam are just going to be out innovated by lots of people in a completely transparent world. It's what Apple did to the cell phone industry, right? Nokia made those phones that, weren't that helpful, but there were others, Motorola, etc. This is a much better product to delight customers.
I think maybe you're overly optimistic because there's a lot of let's say industries that their intrinsic business model, okay, doesn't really allow them to innovate in a way that will benefit society optimally. Okay,
Yeah.
A good example would be the pharmaceutical industry.
Yep.
We have, the trend is they're making all those diseases into like chronic diseases. Okay, so you have to take medication for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Rather than just solve the problem as the truth,
Yeah.
Take AIDS, for example,
Yeah.
You have all those cocktails that basically people in Africa need to take for the rest of their life.
Yep.
I'm sure that they can solve AIDS, once and for all, but, economically speaking, it just doesn't make sense for them.
Yeah.
Same goes for cancer.
But I agree with every word you said, in that nothing changes overnight. Things take a long, long, long time to change. Change is really slow. But be sure that when things change in a given industry, they change. So I'll tell you something happened last.
However, on that, human nature doesn't change.
Agreed. That's why things take a long time to change.
And with that said, I mean, look at, I don't know, did you see the documentary Who Killed the Electric Car?
No.
Okay, you should look at it. It's like 15 years ago, I think, the documentary. It was about the fact that there was an electric car. Obviously, it wasn't as good as we would want it to be with today's cars. But it was basically what politicians did to it, which doesn't exist anymore. And now came Shia Gassi, and he came with his electrical car, and we all see where it is. The human nature element is, in my opinion, after seeing that and seeing what happened in a better place, we could create that car.
But Tesla's doing it and they're killing it.
So I saw Jeff Immelt last week. I was in Palos Verdes, and the speaker at 5:30 was Jeff Immelt, the famed investor because of Shimon Peres in Better Place, where he lost $20 million. And right after him spoke Elon Musk, the founder and CEO of Tesla. And I think, by the way, that is the perfect example. People are lining up to spend $60,000 to $150,000 on a Tesla, in most cases because they have it. But in some cases, they're actually making a statement
It's a great car.
with it because it's a great car that not only saves the world from fossil fuels a little bit,
I'm a good friend of Kimball Musk.
but it's a wonderful thing that delights customers. And delighting customers, by the way, he's not making a whole lot of money right now, is part of doing this, right? And having a mission around it,
Feeling good about it.
yeah, is part of doing this. And but that's just one example. And by the way, I agree with you. Things change really slowly. But by hanging around B corporations, you feel the change in the air. 3 years ago when I first met him, it was slow. All of a sudden he cracked 3 states. Within 12 months, it went from 3 to 16 states. There are tens of companies signing up every month, whereas to get to the first 50 took 2 years. These changes happen slowly, and then they slowly pick up steam, and they get going, and they get going, and they get going, and they take a generation, by the way, at least, sometimes more. And to uproot, business models of pharmaceutical industries maybe takes longer than that because you're talking about people's lives. And cars move at a faster pace than pharmaceuticals do, but only slightly more. Phones move. Different parts of the ecosystem move at different paces. But I think the trend is becoming pretty clear at this point, and I think it's in the right direction finally. But what's missing is like a baseline of education and an acknowledgement, at least in my opinion, that the rights system that we all scream and yell about for years, human rights, etc., is off. And historically, if you think about it, and by the way, it's taken 600 years or so to work our way through the rights system, is the rights system was born for a good reason. It's because we had kings and dictators and people who usurped people's individual rights. So the rights movements, over the hundreds and hundreds of years of time, grew up to free the human spirit and the human being from these kings and dictators who controlled them, controlled their land, controlled their resources. The problem is, as in everything, by the way, in life and in economics too, these things go into overshoot, right? It's like if you produce too much oil, the price of oil goes down too much, you can't say, things go into overshoot. And what's happened to us is the rights movement, at least in my opinion, has gone into overshoot. And when you have a completely transparent world with 8.5 billion people, however many people are in this world, each of whom wants to claim their own individual rights, it's unsustainable. You have 100 million corporations, each want to claim their individual rights, it's unsustainable. And
how do you incentivize people to actually take responsibility?
Yeah.
There's always this tension and trade-off between the short-term and long-term. And I agree with you that taking responsibility and not claiming rights is probably economically the right thing to do in the long term. And we have as the society a motivation to incentivize people and companies to do that. But I think that the real question is, if you want to really create changes, how do you create the economic incentives, the social incentives, the political incentives to actually drive people there?
Now I'm going to really disappoint you. I actually think we can't incentivize people, and we shouldn't incentivize people to do it. But we should acknowledge that this is a very, 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 very long process that needs to start. And I would argue that the best incentive, not the best incentive, the best way to get there is education. And education doesn't happen on tests, right? Because you can't test for this stuff. It's a values-based education that instead of stressing rights, stresses responsibilities. And it's going to take generations, not one, not two, not three. And I'd argue that Jewish values and the Torah, and anybody who reads the Rambam in Hilchot Matnot Aniyim, where he talks about the values of tzedakah, of charity, sees it right there, black on white, right, about our responsibilities. And that the best way to inculcate these values, the responsibilities, is actually through a long set of texts and curriculum that goes back not 600 years, but a couple of thousand years, and updates it for the modern time, right? Because there are things that are irreconcilable with stuff that appears in the Talmud and the Torah and places like it just doesn't work today, and there needs to be updated for that. But educating kids who are tomorrow's leaders over a long period of time, I think actually will make a difference. I think it's impossible because incentive systems breed schemes. But if anyone wants to see another great book, Neil Borofsky, who is a special investigator of TARP, has an incredible blow-by-blow account entitled Bailout, of the bailout of the U.S. financial system. And my one-day takeaway from that is, aside from the fact that politicians don't have anyone's best interest at heart, is that anytime you create incentives and flow money through the system, somebody takes more advantage of it than you ever intended. I got a friend who was CEO of a solar energy company in the UK, and we basically figured out is all the incentives for solar energy flowed to the installers of it. So he set up a company, hired 300 Mexicans, trained them to install things, drove a truck through it, bankrupted the UK incentive system on it in 4 minutes, right? So it's totally doable. Incentive skew systems, education, much like I think responsibilities is a longer-term system, I think education, as hard and painful as it is and hardest to measure, is a better way to get at it.
I just want to add one thing to what Shai was saying. Agree with what you said, that I think that we do a lot of education on responsibility. That really comes from that it is an incentive. The incentive would be the pleasure of responsibility. A leader is judged by the responsibility he undertakes. And as Michael's example of charity, people think that charity is for the person getting the charity, but there's actually more pleasure by the person giving the charity. So it's an experiential pleasure through education process, also for children, also for adults, for today's leaders in the country of Israel, which grows very fast pace, things change very quickly. So I agree with what you're saying, that there is an incentive. The incentive is the pleasure involved in it.
I think you're on a slippery slope, too. I think there are a lot of examples historically one can point to where corporations, and they exist today, I think many examples in Japan. Most of these corporations, they might say it because they want to say it to the press, but they're not run for profit. They're run for what they think is the benefit of society, which means employing large numbers of people and making things just hum along smoothly. I think maybe following the precepts of the Torah makes sense in a country like ours, but you're not going to get other countries to adhere to that. They're going to abide by their own precepts of what they think is right for society and what's not. Bayer, the manufacturer of Zyklon B, I'm sure thought they were doing a great service to their society when they were manufacturing it. And there are a lot of other examples historically. So, what is of an important value for society A may generate directions for their corporations to behave in a certain way in their society, but it may not be in the overall interests of humanity or the interests of another society that's maybe going to suffer as a consequence of those behaviors.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I don't know that the profit motive per se is necessarily generates better results. It generates different results, and I don't.
At least they're transparent.
What?
At least they're transparent.
Not sure, but
many societies they are.
I think that. And by the way, I don't misunderstand me. I don't think people should run not-for-profit corporations like they do in Japan. Quite the contrary. I think they should be profitable and they should grow. I just think that there are more sustainable ways of growth. Now, one of the things I think is happening is we're getting more and more transparency into the world, right? Anyone's following what's going on in Turkey, there's actually a great, someone just literally as they walked in here sent me a great picture taken in Istanbul, which says, "This revolution will be Twittered, not televised."
That's right.
And with the transparency that the internet and mobile phones has provided, and I view, by the way, that all is positive. All is positive. All is positive. Yeah, I'm not saying there aren't negative side effects, and people spend too much time on it. But on a general societal level, more transparency is better, not worse. And more international transparency is better, not worse. I hope, and it's hope, it's not I agree with your comment. I hope that will get to people doing things that are more beneficial, not just to Cyclone B or their society, but to the world at large. I just want to touch once for a second on ruthless efficiency and innovation. There's a notion out there that this is bad. I don't view it as bad or good. I view it as inevitable. If you don't innovate your way to be efficient, somebody else will. And there's like a claim, most often expressed in this country by Shelley Yachimowicz. Since I've been videoed saying this before, in my opinion, he's heard this from me also, is enemy number one of the Israeli worker and economy. The absolute public enemy number one for anybody who wants a job in this country. That all this advancement is bad. No, advancement is inevitable. If you don't do it, somebody else does it. It's the natural drumbeat and march of human history. And our job as a society is to educate and enable around it, right? So we've had a ton of discussion around Priya Galil and all these other people about the rights of these workers, right? They have the right that we keep Priya Galil open. We're going to, pay for a textile factory that makes no sense in the Negev. By the way, when we say we're going to pay for it, that means you pay for it and we pay for it, right? It doesn't mean that it comes out of money's not created in thin air. These people have no right to a job. None. They have no right to that job. Here's what nobody talks about. What's the responsibility to provide a updated education to people so that they have the skills to compete for the next job? So there's a guy I know near Beit Shan who has a spice farm. Tavlinim? It's like 11 dunam, the spice farm, and he exports, I think, to Holland. I'm not sure. Wonderful spices. He has 41 Thailandia workers who work for him, and one Jew, one Israeli. Okay? And he says, this is crazy, I can't scale my farm because I can't get permits to bring in Thailandia workers. So he's decided what he's doing is installing a robotic system. And by the way, with the robotic system, he can expand first to 40 dunam, and then to 60 dunam, and then to 80 dunam without more. How many of the Thailandia workers does he need, you think, after the robotics are in? 0. He does need 6 people, though, who are agronomists who know how to operate robotics and computers and even some programmers. You know how many of those he can find in Beit Shan? 0. 0. Right? But had someone thought about the fact that maybe we have responsibilities to work, it doesn't matter, Priya Galil or people who were in farming or whatever it is, and instead of saying you have a right to continue to be putting, food into cans in Priya Galil, in the Galil, when it's going to go to China, and instead said, why don't we train you to operate robotics? That would be responsibility. But we don't think like that. As a society, we've become conditioned over 500 years not to think like that. So there's a great story in the Gemara. Everyone says this is like some sort of ha'arama, it's a big trick. But I actually think it's the great adaptation of human responsibility about what's called a pruzbul. So here's a story. According to Halacha, we have a semi-socialist system where in Shemitah, every 7 years we forgive all loans. All loans are forgiven every 7 years, not to Nochi Dankner, but to individuals who've taken loans. If an individual is taking a loan from another individual, we forgive the loan. Sometime during the time around of the second Beit HaMikdash, and the Torah warns you, it says, by the way, here's your responsibility, right? Maybe you'll say, Karva shnat hashev shnat hashmita v'ra'ah, with an ayin, achicha, v'ra'ah necha b'achicha evyon, and you won't give him a loan, right? You won't give him a loan. Because why? Because as soon as I give him the loan, it's going to be wiped off the books by the halacha. And the Torah warns you, don't do that. Malasot, people are people. They clearly did it. So sometime during the time of the second Beit HaMikdash, the economy seized up. And if you're a farmer, and everything was an agrarian economy then, if you're a farmer, the way the system works is you take a loan from the bank at the beginning, you plant your seeds, and you pray that the fruit and vegetables come out at the end, you sell them in the market, and you pay back the loan. Adayom hazeh, that's the way the system works. Okay? Pachot or unless you have a CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, there's a subscription system, I have an investment in that area, but Adayom hazeh, the system works that way. Hillel HaZaken takes a look around during the time of the second Beit HaMikdash, and he sees nobody's giving loans. Why? Yeridat HaDorot, I don't know. Right? People are people. So he institutes something called the pruzbul. What's the pruzbul? I give my shtarei chov to the Beit Din, and I say, I can't collect it because the Torah said, but the Beit Din can collect it for me after Shemitah is over. So he looks and goes, no, because we need to be responsible to the economy. That's the main point that Hillel HaZaken comes to say. We're responsible to the economy. Responsible to the economy says we can't let credit seize up. Without credit, the economy ceases to function. More people will lose their jobs if we don't solve the credit problem. Now I ask you, is there anybody around today who would do that? Say, oh my God, the economy is going to seize up if we don't train more workers into the force, if we don't more enable credit? No, he's got a right to this one's got a right to sit in yeshiva. You may be right. You don't have a right to anything. You have a right to contribute to society to make everybody else's life better, not your own. That's the goal of society. I think that's the Jewish view. I wish we'd be more innovative here in Israel on a corporate level. I don't think we are. That's why I got yelled at in the Vadat HaChukah 4 or 5 years ago. But I think that as Jews living in Israel, we have a real chance. If you think back to the Pasuk in Yeshayahu, Shiftu Yatom Rivu Almanah, that's not because the Yatom and the Almanah is a right. We have a responsibility to take care of the Yatom and the Almanah and the unemployed and the Gerim and all these other people. That's our responsibility. And we should be doing that through normative corporate practices, because corporations are what change societies and countries, not politicians. If we wait for them, we'll all be dead. They don't change things. And Amdinat tapel, Uvda, lo metaplim. So better we should just do it ourselves. And if enough people go ahead and start thinking about the world in terms of responsibilities and rights, I think we'll be in a better place.
Better place.
Better place. Not that better place.
A better place.
Mike, you take a few questions?
I have a question.
Former student of mine.
Yeah. So my question is actually, how do you plan to implement it in your company?
So I have now my first company that signed up to be a B corporation, and a second one I hope on the way. That's the beginnings of it. We have a few companies where, in little ways we start to do it. So I now have 2 companies in which, this Ovdei Kabbalan situation in this country drives me completely crazy. It drives me crazy not because they're mistreated. That's true too. It drives me crazy because everybody kicks the can to somebody else. It's always somebody else's fault. So in Conduit and Wix, we had Ovdei Kabbalan. We arrived there. We don't anymore. Everybody's employed directly, given options, given a chance to succeed. And we run education for the Ovdei Nikayon to help them out of it, at least in Conduit at this point. I hope in Wix soon. And by the way, startups in early stages, it's really hard to do a lot of these things that I'm talking about. They've got enough problems on their head. I want to say that up front, right? So, but as you become larger and larger, I think your responsibility grows and grows, right? In the same way that we have kids, and kids have less responsibilities when they're kids, and more responsibilities when they get to bar mitzvah and 20, and they go to the army, and that teaches responsibility. And I think companies are the same way. Startups have less responsibility, and have to stay more focused. As they grow up, they got to do more. So those are the kinds of things we're trying to do.
There's another.
And we just this summer, by the way, this is something I tried to do last summer. It didn't work because of geography, nothing else. There's an incredible organization in Yerushalayim called, you probably know, TESA or something like that, which trains Ethiopians to be computer engineers. So we made it our business at a few of the larger companies to make sure we take them in for summer internships and then jobs afterwards to keep doing that. You make little changes in society, by the way, in little parts of society. It starts. You asked about incentives. I actually think peer pressure is the world's greatest incentive ever created. We think of it in negative terms, but peer pressure is the best societal incentive ever created.
Yeah, when I talk about incentives, I'm talking about tax breaks. I'm talking about real incentives, of values. Okay? And I think that what you're describing makes a lot of sense, I think, in the economic sense, in the pure economics.
Yeah.
And the incentives don't need to come from the same bag of tricks that we currently use. Okay?
Yeah.
And I think that if you really want to be effective in this, okay, in moving corporations to become B corporations, whatever, you need to think about the incentive system that drives us as a society.
I understand. Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
There was a movement, I forgot who I went to listen to speak about in Israel, for the social for-profit group. Not a non-profit, but social for-profit. Maybe I'm lacking the technical.
Yeah, it's called, there's a Chevra Lelo Matarot Revach.
No,
Not that?
There's
non-profit.
a IVN is pushing this notion for some time.
Okay, so
Israel Venture Network.
yeah, and the speaker, I forgot his name. I'll remember it a bit later. But anyway, so the example he used in his presentation was he had a restaurant. It's in this but it's allowed to make a profit, so that they're also using a social clause, whereas it's taking troubled youth.
Chanoch Barkat.
From Biran.
Yeah, Lila.
Teaching them to work. Yeah, teaching them to work
Lilith,
in
sorry.
the restaurant. Yeah, but there's restaurants actually. Lili.
Yeah. I try to eat there as much as possible because of that.
Yeah.
It's actually great food.
It's great food, and it's a great
they're
cause.
Financially, they're performing financially as a cause.
Yeah. Bakery 29 on Achad Am. Netta, she's awesome. So I basically only eat there in the neighborhood around Rothschild because all of her profits go to support the Chayalim.
Yeah.
So, people are willing to change their behavior to do good things. But apropos your question about the products before, Shai, that's your question. You're willing to change your behavior to be responsible. People are willing to do that.
Is there an app that shows you socially responsible businesses around you?
It's so funny you say that. So,
Question, sorry?
is there an app that shows you socially responsible behavior? So, 3 months ago,
Businesses around you.
What?
is there an app that shows you socially responsible businesses around you?
Non-profit.
There is a ranking in Israel that is called
Israel.
Mala.
Ma'ala. Yeah.
In Israel.
Yeah. So, about 3 months ago, I heard about an app that tells you whether a food is good for you or not good for you. A month ago, it came out. It tells you whether it has genetically modified seeds in it or not, and products created by Monsanto. It was created for the protest around Monsanto. So catch this. So I wrote a note to the guy who was the head of the Sochnut, and to somebody in the Prime Minister's office and 3 others, and I said, this may backfire, what I'm about to say right now, but I think if people want to support Israel in a way, and hence you can see where it could backfire in a second, what if it created an app that, when you went in and said, click on the computer and it's got a Pentium chip from Israel in it, and click on this and it's good. You can obviously see the negative use of that in 1 second, but that's kind of the positives and negatives of that approach. But build one.
It'll take a long time to.
But I have a question about your
Invest in
investment
it.
strategy.
But my investment strategy?
Because
You assume I have one.
it was like about 5 years ago that it was obviously that there is a non-sustainability in the telecom market, and unfortunately the semiconductors and the telecom were the biggest sectors in the Israeli high tech, and it was clear that Israel is going to be about to get hit both on the VC industry and the high tech with respect to the numbers of hands. And if you look traditionally, then you see that specifically in the telecom, most of the innovation came from small companies, was adapted by big companies to come up with, but nevertheless, all the VCs immediately closed their desks for the telecoms and everything. How can you, in the investment strategy, understand that something like this is going to happen and say, hey, I'm here for the long term and I continue to invest it, despite the fact that the reason that they closed it was because financial reasons. They saw the short-term financial softness of this market and say, hey, we don't want to invest there anymore.
Erez and I could fill a long book with what's gone wrong with the Israeli venture capital community. A long book. After I finish this one, maybe I'll write that one.
But you see what I'm saying? It's a whole sector that was bypassed and actually caused.
You make a certain assumption that I'm not sure is grounded in fact, and that is that sector had a zchut kiyum, had a reason to exist before that and now and afterwards as a venture capital investment, right? Much like Better Place had no business being a venture capital investment, even though some venture capitalists invested in it. It was a project finance business, and basically the telecom sector
It was a utility.
is a utility,
That's
exactly.
probably what it was, a utility.
And we have now what is, I think, the largest investment in telecom equipment in this country in a company called Compass, which may or may not make it. Micha, who is an incredible guy. If there's anyone who can pull it off, it's him, and that's the bet we
He's in
made.
the enterprise, huh?
No, he's selling to telcos. NTT is the biggest customer, so they're still a telco last I checked if Japan survives. But
But I think the industry, I think the results of the industry kind of speak for themselves, because outside of Cisco and maybe a handful of startups that they've acquired over the time, I challenge you to find a lot of successful startups in these sectors you've talked about that the VCs have missed out on the last 10 years. Anywhere in the world, much less Israel.
I did not challenge the decision, because the decision was, VCs are there for making profit, not for social responsibility.
But they're not there to support a
They are-
population with jobs
They are-
either.
This is part of the social security responsibility.
No, I don't think so.
I don't.
That's what
I think
you
it's
said.
exactly
No,
No.
that's not what I said. I want to be clear.
That's Shelley Yakovich speaking.
No, let's not exaggerate. I'm not talking about failing business, and the telecom is here to stay, right? We all understand that, right?
But look at this.
We have a softness in the telecom right now.
The whole world of let me stop you for a second. The whole world of venture capital, not just in Israel, has not made money. This is Eric's point, I think, in investing in telecom startups for the last 10 years,
I agree.
at least.
Right.
Okay. Yet we have these devices and Android devices. The amount of innovation in telecom that's gone on has gone up dramatically. All that tells you is that the locus of business, as often happens in industry, changes. Initially, the innovators come into the market, and there's a lot of opportunity there. And then the bigger companies, some of them gobble them up, and it becomes a big company's game. Amazon was an innovator 15 years ago. Not even 10 years ago, it was still an innovator. Now it's still an innovator, amazingly so. But it's a much bigger company, right? Apple, 7 years ago, there were no smartphones. They invented this market. Today, they're considered like a big imploding company, right? And no one's inventing a smartphone here now, but 10 years ago, you could have, maybe. So it's it's just the pace. It's what I talked about before. It's the inevitable march of these things, and there's no sense in putting money in yesterday's technology. And by the way, if everyone runs out of telecom, maybe there's an opportunity for Michal Or to do something.
Yeah.
Maybe. I hope so.
Yes, I just want to thank everybody. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Just because somebody, and everybody here knows everybody knew them. We're such amazing people over here, and everyone's reaping off Eric's insight over here. Eric, I just want to go do a quick round. Everyone has like another 5 to 8 minutes, just a quick room around what everybody's doing over. Everyone can meet each other quickly. Everyone can introduce themselves quickly. I'm just going to introduce Barak. You can introduce yourself too, but Barak and I Barak is an amazing leader over here in Israel. For generations, his family, himself in the high-tech world, and a few other worlds as well, Barak and me, we actually learn about leadership once a week for the last 2 years.
Yes,
We're learning Jewish leadership 2 years, and Barak, you can introduce yourself what you're doing in the high-tech world, but around the table, just no more than like 1-2 minutes, so everybody go around real quick.
I have a startup for basically it's a marketplace for medical treatments online.
What?
Medical treatments, a marketplace for medical treatments.
What kind of medical?
If you need an appointment, he'll get you one after.
Mostly the severe
medical
stuff,
treatment is
chemo, all kind of cardiology, surgery, IVFs, coronary
So it's
bypass.
like an informational portal, or it's just something that you engage? How does it?
It's if someone actually wants to get a treatment and he wants to get it usually outside of his country, he's able to find the best
Health tourism.
He's able to find the best specialists and and see prices, etc.
By the way, apropos IVF, if everyone wants to see something amazing, a guy named Max Levchin, who's one of the founders of PayPal, an incredible guy, launched an application last week called Glow, which is essentially trying to disrupt the IVF market by saying that most people who go to IVF don't need it, and you can use his big data analytics in an app to plan how to get pregnant properly. And his results are staggering. It's called Glow. It is an amazing app. GLOW. Amazing.
Barak also has a high value system. Also, he's always choosing. He had the #1 app also, and for a while an iPhone for a few weeks, many years ago, back when he was working at Microsoft. And whenever he tells me his options, we always discuss his actually social responsibility in every new venture he's taken on. I think he's pretty committed to that. Erez, you're up.
Yeah, and Erez Shachar.
If you don't want me to video, I don't have to. It's my first time trying this.
I'm a venture capitalist. I used to be an entrepreneur and ran a business. 10 years ago, I moved to the venture industry. And
The dark side.
Yeah, exactly. The endangered species of Israeli VCs. And I'm managed quite an evergreen. I just raised a new fund called Kumra, which is investing in late-stage venture, in companies that are a bit larger, selling $10-20 million a year, and need to expand. Usually, these are investments in sales and marketing mostly. We were seeing in Israel a lot of companies reach this glass ceiling and then run out of steam. And we think that there is definitely the management capabilities here, and the ecosystem is ready for taking companies to the next level. And we are seeing more and more companies grow larger before they're either acquired or go public, and we want to have this stage of development.
Shai.
I'm Shai Gerster. I'm in the industry for about 20 years with large companies, small companies. Last 7 years I was the CTO and the technology scouting role for Alcatel-Lucent, and hence the telecom. And just January I actually left Alcatel-Lucent in order to open something in the enterprise software, which we are working undercover right now. Probably will have something to show.
See, Eric, even he's running away from telecom.
I'm preaching.
That's because you won't fund them. That's the problem.
I'm preaching, and I'm following my preach.
Orna Kirshnisim, a CPA in New York and Israel, and I've been with large and small companies that went public, gone public. The last position I was holding was with Commerce here in Israel. I left in April, and that's where I'm at.
Hila Kara, and my background comes from science and
She's our awesome neighbor.
They are my awesome neighbors.
And she just had a baby, Mazal Tov.
Yes, thank you. That's it. What else did I do? I have done that for 11 years. I'm number 2 of P&G in Israel. I'm on maternity leave now.
You were the number 1 on Ma'ala.
I'm number 1 on Ma'ala,
Wow.
corporate responsibility for 4 years in a row. On the 10th of June, there is the publication of the new ranking, so I hope we'll get number 1 again. They do actually a Facebook event, so it's quite nice. If they don't invite you to any place, they say, you know, it's a virtual event to go to. That's it. I'm on maternity leave now, and we'll probably go abroad again to another position.
I'm Sharon Abad, I'm Mula Hadasha, and
From Sao Paulo.
from Brazil. My background is
Shell's
in
sister.
project management, and I'm for a job.
רגע, אורן, בבקשה. אורן, אחד מהצוות פה.
אני רוצה לדבר בעברית. האנגלית פה יפה. אני מנסה את אלה שמבינים עברית, נראה אם אתם... אני עובד פה בחודשים האחרונים, אחד הרבנים בצוות. אנחנו בונים פה תוכניות למנהיגות, יהדות, וכל מיני תחומים מגוונים, משרדים, חברות אחד על אחד, אירועים מהסוג הזה ועוד דברים אחרים.
גם עבדת בהייטק?
עבדתי כמה שנים טובות בהייטק, בחברה שמתחרה לשי, לא כסימנס נטוורקס, ועוד כמה סטארט-אפים.
אני דלית שלום, אני עורכת דין במקצועי, בהשכלתי יותר נכון, כי עשיתי הסבה, אני עובדת בחברת רוביקון. I'm sorry, why I'm speaking Hebrew because of you. I work in Rubicon Business Group, which is a financing and investment company. We have a couple of funds, as well as buying companies and make them better than exits. I'm responsible for the international department of the company. We're expanding, so I'm doing the whole business development and the international relations, investors, opening the operations, basically everything that belongs to the international section. And I'm very pleased to be here.
Hi, speaking English right or responsible? My name is Israel of Fassi. I'm running 2 startups. One is completely irresponsible dealing with algo trading. So purely...
That is completely irresponsible, by the way. Those are weapons of mass destruction.
The other one is in the cybersecurity arena. We're trying to improve the world and make it more secure. So
Hopefully you're stopping the algo traders. I have to excuse myself. I have to go. I apologize.
Thank you for coming.
Pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
My name is Ohad. I what you call grew up in the high-tech world, founded and managed a startup and sold it the last 2 years. And this is the way I'm connecting to this discussion. I've made for the society, so I feel I manage an NPO called Nalaga. It's the theater of the deaf and blind. So I've managed it. Yeah. So I've managed it and helped them a bit to stabilize the economic situation. And now I'm back for the high-tech because I have to look for my home as well.
My name is Kobe. I'm from the telecom market. Not finance. 10 years at TCI, 5 years at Nokia Siemens Network. A few years ago I established Q-Fan Technologies. We deliver services to high-tech companies, professional services. That's it. Hope to do good business in the future.
נדבר בעברית, גבי אילן.
נקווה לפחות בארץ.
אני יזם, עוסק בזיהוי דיבור, speech recognition, הראשונה שעסקה בזה בעולם, ARP, Advanced Technologies, אחרי כל החיוג הקולי שהיו טלפונים סלולריים, כוחות של מוטורולה, סמסונג, כאלה, והיום אני ממשיך לעסוק בתחום הזה, בחברה אחרת, בחרנו את החברה, עשינו את זה.
חייב להוסיף שגבי גם כן לומד כמה פעם בשבוע עם אורן, הוא מרגיש שנהנה מזה.
מאוד. ממליץ לכולם.
לא רק הוא.
כן? לא הייתי.
גם על אורן אני ממליץ וגם על עצם העיסוק בזה.
My name is David Broginski, originally from Switzerland. I'm a partner in a real estate fund. It's a boutique fund called Reality. We sit in Ramat Achial, and we specialize in rezoning projects, meaning we buy industrial land and convert it to residential.
Here in Israel? Or?
In Israel, Tel Aviv, Ramat Gal.
My name's Jeremy Lappin. I moved here about 3 years ago from the States. I'm the CEO of a company called Candex, which allows companies to keep track of services they buy or sell with anybody, anywhere in the world.
Wait, I gotta introduce Eric a second. Eric's a modest guy, so I just have to. I also learned with Eric, and we're starting to learn together. Eric was an executive back in Apple, and back in Xerox. His team that he was running helped create the touchscreen that we all use here on our phones today, and the firewall, and has been. And I'm gonna look at his. I can't remember on his LinkedIn profile like a whole list longer than anyone else's I know. And Eric actually moved to Israel back for a Zionist dream, and he's here to help the country, take responsibility for the country. He could be doing a lot of things in the world today.
Helping this guy.
Helping this guy, and really taking responsibility so the Jewish people could help with and fulfill their mission over here, bring light to the nation. But you can introduce yourself as well, if you want.
Hallelujah.
אני הגעתי לפני 3 שנים.
And you sail.
He was,
Oh, and the most important thing is I sail.
and he sails, and he just got an apartment here in Tel Aviv, and he was labeled the Godfather of Apple. So, you weren't labeled the Godfather of Apple?
I don't think that. No. It said the Godfather of the iPod, which I think is not by Apple.
Sorry.
I'm old, but not that old. And neither is true.
I'm Eric's driver, basically. My name is Yaron Carney. I founded Tel Aviv Angel Group, which is a group of foreign investors that invest in Israeli startup companies. And we're 10 people, and 3 of us sit here in Israel. Eric, myself, Eric joined me about a year and a bit ago. And there's another guy who, Joe Rabi, also American, who comes from, who is a financial guy by training, who's a CPA, and founded a very, very large shared office space in New York that has 700 small companies. And he met a hot Yemenite Israeli girl and moved to Israel. That basically sums it up. So we're 3. We do very early stage investments in Israeli tech companies. We have invested in very wide array of different things. Till this summer, we invested in 6 companies. We were very lucky. We sold 5 of the 6, which in our world is just pure luck. And then in the past year, we've done also several investments. We became partners with Google in their accelerator, so we bring our companies there, and they help us with the mentorship and technical mentorship and all these different things. And that's it. Actually, the important aspect that relating to what Michael spoke about earlier is that we actually we support and sort of demand it from our companies to have a social component once they do well. We do that going in the companies when it's easiest, I think, to
define well.
To force it in a way. Yeah, and
Yeah,
that
they
tells us.
define well. What is?
Well, it means when they sell or are profitable, but usually we encourage this, and this is a big test for us.
It's not a big thing to ask young entrepreneurs to allocate a certain percentage of the stock that's still available into a charitable trust fund of some kind, so that should their company succeed, there'll be some amutah of that
Yeah.
that fits their goals and their ideals that can benefit it from, you know.
And that makes sense, because usually they're not going to sacrifice money or investment in non-profit organizations. That's that I understand.
Just for on our own
Nice idea.
for our own PR over here, they met at an Aish event. We have this Thursday a Chavruta night on the beach coming up this Thursday night. Also, we have people learning. We set people up learning Jewish texts with each other, and that's one thing. So I just want to add two things. First of all, I didn't get to introduce my Aish Chayil, Efrat over here on the side. Hope everything. Efrat is right now currently investing in our 5 children, and also over here, also learning.
Without a social component, right?
Also as educating over here, learning with women and with groups in people's homes and offices. And I just wanted to remind everybody just to fill out these sheets, just to circle them if you don't mind. Just take a second. And thank you for coming, and please come back again.
Thank you.
Made a really easy circle question.
I love circling.
What do you say?
I'm a part owner in 2 boats.
You can just leave them on the table, it's fine.
Out of the Tel Aviv Marina. There are like 12 of us, like 3 of us are Anglos, the rest are
And you,
native speaking Israelis.
the problem is that
Pardon?
there's nowhere to sail here except to the horizon.
I know where to sail?
No, there is no word to sail. It's boring coastline, right?
It's okay, but we
I sail
HR,
Same business.
no, but this summer we'll be sailing. Last summer I was sailing in Greece and Croatia. This summer will be Greece.
Oh, really? We did Corfu this summer.
Yeah, we stopped in
It's
Corfu.
ready now, that's why.
It's ready now. So, nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too. Good luck. You need to ride somewhere?
We're seeing a lot of seed stage companies that we can't help right now, so I'd love to send over.
Only the good one.
Only the good one.
We're seeing so much shit. We get
No,
5 companies
it's an interesting niche because you have the angel investors who can do, I don't know, $100,000, maybe 150, and then you have the VCs who are looking to put in like 1.5 or 2.
What's your sweet spot?
It's like 3 to 6. So it's and companies often that have a working prototype or maybe some level of customers. We typically won't have market validation. The whole goal is to put enough money in that you get market validation. And
Mostly internet companies?
these are one ad company that has a way of detecting early detection diseases in chickens. Yeah. I was helping run the company for a short time because they needed help. And then there's one company that probably closed with sort of not medical devices, more consumer type things, but it's for health. Most of what you might imagine is, see, you can put money into a mobile application company because these kinds of companies, unless there's something really unusual about them, they can't go that big. But if you get in, if you visit an investor, you'll find to exit at 3x in 2 years. It's okay.
אתה נראה לי מאוד שם בכל המגלית לא, אבל אתה... אוקיי, אז אורן, היית גם בבית שלו, לא? אורן אחר לפני עזרת שלו. זהו, אורנה. כאילו, אני... כן, נראה לי מוכר.
הגעתי עם הג'נה, הביא אותי לשם, הג'נה שלי. עכשיו הם סוסטיינבול ככה, היה מאוד מקומות קודמת, אתה מגיע עם מתודולוגיות, חברה מסחרית, הייטק, יש פה אני רוצה לעשות דברים, הצלחתי.
סבתא כאילו, היינו ביחד.
אנחנו גם עובדים עם... יש מיזם... קובי, מאיזה זרם? מה? מאיזה זרם? לא. גור. חסידות גור. שהם... לא משנה, יש להם מרכז. חייבים לעבוד, חייבים להתפרנס, יש להם מרכז הם עכשיו עושים דברים, נגיד את החברות, עכשיו אנחנו צריכים לעבוד בתור מהנדסים, מהנדסות. כן, יש לנו עובדים שאנחנו מעסיקים.
אני שואלת כי יש לי חבר גם בקדמי שעושה שם גם חברה של והוא עושה את
קודם כל תחילת הדיטה שלי, אחר כך אני מתחבר, אני לא מתחבר את זה. קודם כל אנחנו מתעסקים כל הזמן.
סבא שלי, זה הגיל המדינה שגדול בכל מקום. עכשיו בצפון, אני לחזור כולם בשבוע כזה. אצלי כל זה העיר. You could be walk around naked, you could have strong, it's the same. זה שכונה סגורה.
גם על החבר.
אני לא מספיק זמן שם.
מסתובבים בהמון
איפה אתה גר?
אני צריכה להגיד שעכשיו כאילו וואי, שזה ג'יניוס. בסדר גמור.
שלום הבא. אני בקשר טוב עם דיוק.
יופי, בסדר.
נעים לי הכי.
אבא שלו אומר, אתה יודע? אמרתי לו? זה מה שאני עושה לפנסיה שלי.
כל הזמן משפחת לנו מסביב להורים.
אפילו בטד שבגליל. אז תראה להם איזה חדר בצד הבית שלך בגליל.
עשתה שבת אצל ההורים שלי כאילו.
Still recording.